Welcome to the HJC Podcast, powered by HockeyJerseyConcepts.com. New episodes go live every Saturday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern on iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, and wherever you listen to your podcasts. Good day, everyone. This is episode 21 of the HJC Podcast. My name's Ryan. I'm your host. And for this one, I'm actually going it alone. It's just me today, so all the other guys had something to do or weren't interested in talking about today's topics, which is fair enough. Not a lot of going on in the Jersey world. We're still waiting another week or so to see the Stadium Series jerseys. We did have, I guess one piece of news that we could bring up was Nashville earlier this week had Hockey is for Everyone. You can play warm-up jerseys, which I'm totally on board with the cause. I love the idea of it, but it just seems something that is usually done by a minor league team, especially not using an Adidas template. They went to a different jersey supplier, but you know, it's for a good cause. So you got to look past that kind of thing. It really doesn't matter. So today's topic with the slow jersey week is trade deadline speculation, and I'll dabble in the playoffs. Who's going to make it? Who's not going to make it? Teams that I like and don't like. And we'll still do our regular segments. Why not? Dip into the mailbag. I'll do fake or authentic by myself. And we also have Throwback Throwdown, which will just be a quick little segment today. And, of course, your chance to win a free HJC sticker. It's something we do every podcast. It's your chance to win a free HJC sticker, and that'll come up later in the podcast. All right, trade deadline coming up this Monday. Whenever you're listening to this podcast, trade deadline might have already passed. So let's look at a few players who may be going, may not be going. And being a Leafs fan, I'll start there. If it was up to me, the one person that I would trade, because I think there's some value there, and I don't think you would upset the team too much, and you could probably get something back in return. JVR, James Van Riemsdyk, I think is definitely a movable piece. He's a UFA. He has provided 20-plus goals this year for the Leafs, so that would be of concern to replace those goals. But there is Kasperi Kapanen on the fourth line for the Leafs, who I think could replace those goals. So that's one guy who could move as far as the Leafs. There's Josh Levo. He just hasn't found a place on this Toronto roster for the past 2 or 3 years. He is a scoring winger. He is a right-handed shot. There are definitely people who could use a guy like Josh Levo on their team. And it's just a matter of the Leafs trying to get the right fit for him. So he may go at the deadline if the deal's there. Of course, more teams are open to trading after the season around draft time because there is no salary cap. So you make a trade and then afterwards you can deal with your salary cap issues. So it opens up the door to more trading partners after the season. So that may be a time when a guy like Josh Levo will go. Looking around the league, the biggest name, the guy that I think definitely will be traded, Rick Nash, New York Rangers. This guy is on the move. I'm not saying anything groundbreaking here. He's a UFA. He's submitted a list of teams he'll go to, so that narrows it down. 33 years old. He's got 18 goals this season. Only 28 points. Interesting. I'm getting all this information off tsn.ca, their trade bait list. But Rick Nash is definitely going somewhere. Winnipeg, now that the Derek Brassard deal has gone through, I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up in Winnipeg. There's rumors that he ends up back in Columbus. That would be really interesting. He kind of asked his way out of there. So it'd be interesting to see how welcome back he would be. And that's not guaranteeing Columbus gets in the playoffs if they pick up Rick Nash. There might be a transition period. I would love to see Winnipeg pick him up. That would reinforce their cup run. And another big option is Nashville. They're in hard on Rick Nash, and I definitely wouldn't be surprised to see him end up there. After the Derek Brassard trade on Friday, a name that's popped up now is defenseman Ian Cole, who went to the Ottawa Senators in that trade. And the Sens will try and flip him, probably get a draft pick. But that's a defenseman, a UFA, of course, so he's a rental. But, a name on defense if you need. So again, I'm looking at Winnipeg. They could bump up their defense. Now, there's other options out there where they could reinforce their defense. You need defense in the playoffs. There will be injuries. There will be ups and downs. You need depth on defense. So picking up someone like Ian Cole, even if he plays half the games or a quarter of the games in the playoffs, just reinforces your defense going into the playoffs, and you need it for a cup run. I've always had this feeling, too, that Johnny Oduya, who's a UFA, probably this might be his last year in the NHL, just based on age and play, he might be forced out. He's a UFA. Ottawa would love to move their UFAs and get anything for them. He does have a modified no-trade clause, according to TSN, but he's a guy that I could see end up back in Winnipeg. Looking again, of course, the big name that is popping up is Erik Karlsson. I think he will be traded at the draft or around draft time. I don't think he's going anywhere here at trade deadline, and that again goes back to there's not a lot of trade partners. You're limited on trade partners right now. Of course, Erik Karlsson, top 5 in the game when he's on his game. This could be an off year for him. People are also speculating that his tendon surgery, maybe that's affecting his play. So will that affect his play going forward? Of course, the value now in getting him is that you'd get 2 playoff runs if you pick him up at the trade deadline. But again, another hook on that is Ottawa wants teams to take Bobby Ryan's contract. You would get a discount on the price you would have to pay if you took Bobby Ryan on. So that's kind of a interesting thing there. I think taking on Bobby Ryan's contract is just hindering your franchise for, I think that's 4 years going forward. That Erik Karlsson's a great player, but I don't know if you want to take Bobby Ryan on for 4 years. That's just too risky, but someone will end up doing it. The big name out there is Tampa. They are looking to improve their defense. And if you just go through TSN's trade bait list, Karlsson, if they can get him, I don't know if it's going to work out. Mike Green is the next name on the list and has been constantly linked to Tampa Bay. He's injured right now, which actually makes it a little more difficult. Teams want to see the product right now, and he may have been moved already if he had been playing, but he's a little banged up and he hasn't been playing. Other D out there, Ryan McDonough for the Rangers. Yes, I think Ryan McDonough would be moving here at the trade deadline. Again, the whole draft situation and more trade partners, so that may hold back a trade there. Jack Johnson, he wants out of Columbus. He's asked out of Columbus. I just don't see Columbus trading him by the trade deadline when they're trying to make a push. Now, I know he's not as big of a piece there anymore, but when they're trying to make a push for the playoffs, I just don't see getting rid of Jack Johnson because it's convenient for Jack Johnson. Again, I've talked about defensive depth that you need in the playoffs. Just keep him and then get it done at the draft. Oduya, Ian Cole, we've already talked about. Matt Hunwick in Pittsburgh, I don't think he's going anywhere because they've traded Ian Cole. And Ben Hutton in Vancouver, I'm not familiar with that player, so I can't really comment on that. It's going to be an exciting trade deadline, at least for TV viewers. I don't think it's too exciting for the guys on TSN and Sportsnet who have to cover it and fill time. A dark horse that I'm thinking could be traded, and I don't know who you're going to replace him with, but I think St. Louis would love to get away from Jake Allen in net. It's just hasn't too many ups and downs, hasn't been consistently up, and they are a team that's fading fast in the standings. So I wouldn't be surprised if St. Louis moves on from Jake Allen, but I don't know what trade is out there. I know Bob McKenzie from TSN has been talking about John Gillies, the goaltending prospect from Calgary. So I don't know if you want to thrust John Gillies into a starting role like that, or if St. Louis trades Jake Allen at the deadline, is that kind of a signal that you're throwing in the towel? And now's not a time to do that. St. Louis could make some noise in the playoffs if everything fell their way and they got lucky. Looking at a few other names, Patrick Maroon from Edmonton. He's a UFA. He's definitely going somewhere. Evander Kane. This is an interesting one. Buffalo's price still too high on Evander Kane. 20 goals this season so far. He's a UFA. I just don't know if I want to take that on. I might take that on as a rental, but not for the price that Buffalo's asking. Mark Letestu. I see this as a name who could end up in Toronto. They're looking for fourth line center depth. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up in Toronto, but a lot of teams are looking for depth at center. Young centermen, right-handed shooting defensemen. These are things that all teams want. So when you hear your team come out and say, oh, we're looking for a young, speedy forward or some depth at center or a right shooting defenseman, yeah, good luck. All teams are looking for that. And most of the time, the only way to get that is to draft and develop. Mike Hoffman in Ottawa, he's definitely being traded, but he does have a modified no trade clause according to TSN, so that will be interesting. Zach Smith out of Ottawa, I don't understand what value this guy brings to your team. 5 goals this season. He's he's got some term left on his contract. He's got a cap hit of $3 million, but I just don't understand picking up Zach Smith. Not necessarily a name I think of. From Montreal, Thomas Plekanec, he'll be moved. He loves Montreal, though, according to TSN insiders. So he could end up back in Montreal come July 1st. Thomas Vanek, this guy always seems to come up at trade deadline. He plays for Vancouver. You know, Vancouver would love to get some assets in their half rebuild, half on the fly thing. But this guy is not a playoff performer. Thomas Vanek is not a playoff performer. He fades out. And for me, that's not someone I want on my team. Just not a smart pickup, but someone will. Once you lose out on Brassard, who's already off the board, then maybe you lose out on Nash. Then maybe you lose out on Hoffman. Now you're looking at wingers, Pat Maroon, I guess, or Evander Kane. The price is too high. We've talked about that. And you end up with someone like Thomas Vanek and wishful thinking. So it'll be interesting to see how everything shakes out on trade deadline. I would have loved to have done a live trade deadline show, but that's not going to work out at this point. But that right around the deadline, 3 p.m. when all those trades start rolling in, that are all waiting in line to finalize in the trade call. That would have been pretty cool to start at 3 p.m. But lots of names on there that are depth guys that aren't going to tip the scale in any way, but teams will overpay come Monday for these players. And a lot of these moves will not pay off. I mean, only one team can win the Stanley Cup. So a lot of these moves are going to end up just being moves that cost the franchise later on down the road. If I'm a GM and I'm not a GM and I'm not anywhere close to ever becoming a GM, first round picks just would not be in play. I would not be putting them in play unless I'm a team like Tampa Bay or Nashville, or I guess Pittsburgh's revving up. They seem to be all in, so they gave away their first round pick. Pardon me. If it's this year, and you're going to be drafting somewhere between 28th or 31st, maybe I'd be willing to give up a first round pick. But other than that, I mean, you can't just be giving away first round picks. This is how you got to stock your team, and your first round pick almost has to, in this day and age, almost has to be playing on your team within 2 to 3 years. So it's just not something I would be looking to give up. So trade deadline coming up on Monday. It may have already passed by the time you listen to this. It'll be interesting to see who comes and goes. I'd love to hear who you guys think. If you listen to this before the deadline, drop us a comment, drop us an email. We may review them next week. Who do you think's going? Who do you want to see on your team? And of course, I would love to hear your trades. These hypothetical trades always are fantastic to comment on. So I would love to hear your guys' hypothetical trades. Next up, we're going to be talking about playoff bubble teams, who's in, who's out, what I'm looking forward to. You're listening to the HJC podcast every Saturday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern on HockeyJerseyConcepts.com. Listen, download, and subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, Spreaker, Stitcher, and TuneIn Radio. All right, let's talk the NHL playoffs. There's some bubble teams. We'll start in the West. And bubble teams we're looking at Minnesota, Dallas, St. Louis, I guess you could say. Anaheim's there. They're a bubble team. Los Angeles, Calgary, Colorado. It looks like Chicago's out. Edmonton's definitely out. Vancouver, we've known these things. These guys are out. Arizona, way out. Thanks for... Are you still in the league, Arizona? You want to give us a call? Let us know if you're still in the NHL, because you are quickly becoming the most irrelevant team. New Jersey's the most irrelevant team, but they're starting to get good. So Arizona, if you want to start playing hockey, people would appreciate that. Let's take a look at Minnesota. I like their coach. I like Stahl's rejuvenated there. Parise's finally hitting his stride. I like Suter. I like Dubnyk in goal. I think they've got a good chance to make the playoffs. And they could be one of those teams that shows up in the first round and gives their opponent a hard time or provides an upset. They're an interesting case, and I like them to make the playoffs. Moving over to the Pacific, the battle is between San Jose, Anaheim, Los Angeles, maybe Calgary. I don't like Calgary's team. I don't think they don't have any first round draft picks. They've lost that too. You can't be a team struggling to make the playoffs and not have a first round draft pick. That doesn't spell long-term success for that team. But anyways, let's start with San Jose. Obviously Joe Thornton's out, but their goaltending is solid. They still have a decent forward core. The players there have playoff experience, so I think they have what it takes. Anaheim this year, they have talented forwards. They have a great goaltending tandem with Gibson and Miller. They just haven't been able to fully piece it together. In the stretch drive here, as of this recording, they got 20 games left, 6-3-1 in their last 10. So they look sort of to be piecing it together at the right time, or staying consistent enough to piece it together at the right time here. Based on experience, you gotta like them, but based on the way they've played this year and their inconsistency, they are a question mark. But I'm putting Anaheim in there. I do like Anaheim. Moving on to Dallas Stars. They stocked the cupboard this year in hopes of making the playoffs. If they make the playoffs, Ken Hitchcock's defensive strategies and ideals could make this another team that could do some damage, cause an upset. They currently hold down the first wildcard spot. They play in the Central Division, so Minnesota and Dallas could flip-flop, and Dallas ends up playing either Nashville or Winnipeg in the first round. But Dallas looks solid enough to make the playoffs. I like their push this year. St. Louis, now this is a team where it looks like the wheels might be coming off. They can't stay consistent. The injuries might have caught up with them. It's just, and like I mentioned before in the trade portion, it just doesn't look like Jake Allen has what it takes to take the team on his back and push them into the playoffs. Carter Hutton and backup, he does a decent job, but it's just not going to be enough in St. Louis. So if I'm going to pick a team, I'm taking St. Louis out, and I'm putting this next team in, the Los Angeles Kings. I don't know when they're getting Jeff Carter back, but it looks like they will be getting him back before the season's out. So that's sort of like a trade deadline acquisition for them. He will need some time to get his feet back under him, get his timing back. You give him 3 to 5 games for that. You'd more prefer it to be on the 3-game side. But I do like Los Angeles to push into the playoffs. I don't think they can do any damage in the playoffs. They still need some more pieces, some more retooling. But I think LA jumps in, and I'm taking St. Louis out. And as I mentioned, Calgary, I don't understand this team. The goaltending has been decent. Their defense is quite good. Their forwards, they have Johnny Gaudreau. Sam Bennett slowly started turning it around. Just the cast, they haven't been strong enough, and I just don't see them making the playoffs this year. And even if they did get in, they're not going to make any noise. Colorado, they've been improving. Again, this is a good step forward for them. Anything would be a good step forward based on last year. So I don't see them making the playoffs this year. They're pushing. It would be a great story if they did. This is all part of their improvement, and it's exceptional for them to get this experience down the stretch here to try and push to make the playoffs. But I'm choosing them not to make it. So I have Nashville, Winnipeg, Minnesota, Vegas, San Jose, Anaheim, Dallas, and Los Angeles in no particular order making it. And my choice coming out of the West is Nashville. Let's move to the East now, and the Atlantic Division is set. Tampa, Boston, Toronto. They're making the playoffs. 1, 2, 3, most likely in that order. We'll see how that goes. Over in the Metro, now this is where things get interesting. Pittsburgh has now made their play. They've made their trade. They look poised to go on a run. They're putting it together again at the right time. It's a team with experience. We all know that. Back-to-back cups does that. When you have Crosby, Malkin, Kessel, and now Brassard, who's going to be playing third-line center. I've talked about depth at center. It's what you need in the playoffs. A little worried that they gave up a defenseman, but I'm sure they're comfortable with the trade that they made. So Pittsburgh's not even a question of being in or out. They're in. They're going to be fine. Washington, they're in, but again, how can you ever count on them to do any damage in the playoffs? So forget Washington. Philadelphia, they had that terrible 10-game losing streak. And since then, I think they have 28 wins and less than 15 losses. So they've really put it together. They're on another hot streak right now. So they're actually even further than a wild card spot. They're in a division spot. They would play Washington on the road in the first round right now. Philadelphia, to me, Philadelphia and New Jersey, I don't think both of them can make it. Now they're comfortable right now. But it seems to be Columbus is the team that's struggling. But I like Columbus better to secure a playoff spot than I do New Jersey or Philadelphia. Philadelphia seems to be a bit of a streaky team, but right now they're on a good streak. So if they can get a good streak going at the right time, then yes, they'll make the playoffs. New Jersey, they started hot. They were doing exceptional. They've fallen back down to earth a little bit, but they're still a young, fast team. Maybe overachieving a little bit right now. So we'll see. And Columbus, they're my pick. I would put them into the playoffs. They're hanging on to the final wild card spot, and they're 5 behind New Jersey. So we'll see if anything changes there in the last 20 games. But I actually like Columbus. I don't like their coach, but I like Columbus to make the playoffs. The Islanders, they're in the same spot, exact same spot they were last year, struggling to get that last wild card spot. And I just don't think they're going to get it. Their goaltending and their defense is not good. Their goaltending especially. Their forward group is good, but when the puck is in your end and sometimes in your net so often, you don't have a chance to get it to the forward group. So I do not see the Islanders making the playoffs, and I do not see John Tavares re-signing there. That's just my opinion. I wouldn't want to stick around that organization. It's still another 3 years until they move into their brand new building. It's not a good building situation right now, sharing. They're going to have 2 home arenas next season. And I wouldn't be surprised in 3 seasons if they're just back at Nassau full time. Another bubble team is the Carolina Hurricanes. Again, just not a strong enough team. They have a good young core, but there's young cores that are better around the NHL. I don't see Carolina making the playoffs. I think they need to improve that defense, which they may do at trade deadline. They may have already done by the time you listen to this. So it'll be interesting, but I don't think Carolina is making the playoffs this year. Florida, they're currently 5 points back as of this recording. Again, that's a team that just can't seem to gain any success. They're putting a push on this right now, but that just reminds me of the early 2000s Leafs, Toronto Maple Leafs, who would put this push on, have an excellent final 20 games, and then miss the playoffs by 3 or 4 points. and it's just not a pleasant position to be in as far as franchise growth. And that's where I see Florida right now. They're not quite good enough. So maybe this is a good, just like I mentioned previously with Colorado, maybe for Florida, the push into the playoffs is a good experience for them and will make their team better next year. I guess you could say the Rangers are on that playoff bubble, but with that letter that they sent out to fans saying that changes were coming, you just don't see that point total increasing enough to make the playoffs. And at this point, I don't think it's their goal to make the playoffs. And then it's the rest of the Atlantic Division: Detroit, Montreal, Ottawa, Buffalo, all terrible, terrible teams. I guess Detroit might have visions. They're 7 points back. They might have visions of making the playoffs, but that is not a good enough team. And once they trade Mike Green, they won't be any better. So Detroit not making the playoffs this year. Pick to come out of the East. I mean, how do you bet against Pittsburgh after they made that move? They look like the Stanley Cup champs again. And Tampa Bay, they've just been exceptional all year. Boston obviously has gotten it together in the second half of the season, and waiting for the wheels to fall off. They had an exceptional point streak, and then you thought that would be followed with a down period, and then they would level off. But there has been no down period. They just keep winning and winning consistently. So I like Tampa, Boston, Pittsburgh in the East. People are going to call me a homer, but I think Toronto is a talented enough team to make some noise and cause some upsets. I don't think it's likely, but if anyone in the East is going to upset those big three teams that I named, it would be the Toronto Maple Leafs. So that's my playoff recap, or potential playoff recap. We'll see how that goes. Like I said, I like Columbus. Everyone who's currently set up in the East: Pittsburgh, Washington, Philadelphia, Tampa, Boston, Toronto, New Jersey, Columbus. I like those teams to make it, and everyone who's currently on the outside, the Islanders, Carolina, and Florida, I do not like to make it. So we'll see how that goes. Frankly, with the way the points are laid out, it looks like at this point there's only going to be one true playoff race, and it looks like it's going to be the final wild card spot. So that may not be terribly exciting in the East come a month from now, but we'll see where everything is. The playoffs are always exciting regardless who makes it, and if your team's in the playoff push, enjoy it. But if your team doesn't make it, it just crushes you. It crushes you, and then it's hard to even get excited for the next year because you're just in that terrible spot as far as getting a good draft pick. You don't really get a good draft pick because you finished too high out of the teams that missed. You're trying to hope for this lottery pick win that likely won't come. It's just a bad spot to be in. Still to come here on the HJC podcast is your chance to win a free HJC sticker. So be sure to be listening for that. And coming up next, I'm going to try to do Throwback Throwdown by myself. Throwback Throwdown. And I've chosen one team in here that they shouldn't really count for Throwback Throwdown, but I put them in. The Edmonton Oil Kings, and they're going to go up against the current Anaheim Ducks set. Now, the interesting thing about this is both teams pretty much have the same jersey. The only difference is Anaheim's in Adidas, and the Edmonton Oil Kings of the Western Hockey League are in a Reebok cut. But both jerseys have a yoke. On the black jersey, they have a phantom yoke. They have the swooping stripes going up the side, and then the swooping stripes that come up to a point on the arms. Anaheim uses their color scheme: black, orange, white, bronze. And the Edmonton Oil Kings use black, white, and a neon green. It's actually quite interesting. And they use a different logo, completely the other way from their red and blue classic look that they use. So for the second half of the WHL season, the Oil Kings have gone to this uniform. The black one was their alternate, but now they have a white version as well, and they're using it in the second half of their season. I like the neon green of the Oil Kings. I like the logo. I like that they saw that they had a classic look, and they've gone completely the other way with a modern look. This template for both teams, not my favorite. Could use a lot of tweaks and adjustments made, and it could be quite good. Both teams Anaheim uses collar laces. I don't remember if the Oil Kings do. Anaheim, of course, using their orange jersey. I actually prefer the white jersey, Anaheim's white jersey, to their black jersey. Problem I have with Anaheim is I think their numbers are too thin. It looks really weird on the jersey. The TV numbers are fine. The numbers on the back look too thin to me, and the name on the back looks too small. So for the color reasons, the neon green and the name on the back and the numbers, I'm actually going to give this Throwback Throwdown to the Edmonton Oil Kings, winning by a blowout score of 1-0, as if there was any other option for this Throwback Throwdown. The Edmonton Oil Kings defeat the Anaheim Ducks in this solo edition of Throwback Throwdown. Now, I'd love for you guys to help me out with this. I'd love to hear some comments, and you can email us, mailbag@hockeyjerseyconcepts.com. Let us know who your pick is for this Throwback Throwdown. We have the current Anaheim Ducks jersey set going up against the current black and neon green set of the Edmonton Oil Kings of the WHL. Let me know your pick, and if any come in, I'll read them next week on the podcast when we do our Throwback Throwdown. Still to come on the podcast is your chance to win a free HJC sticker. Fake or authentic? Fake or authentic? If the other guys were here, this would be an interesting segment. It's just me, though, by myself here on the podcast, chatting with you. So I've created these questions, and I'll answer them myself. Fake or authentic? Provided it stays in the minors, I like a team using a different set of jerseys in the second half of the season, just like the Edmonton Oil Kings are doing. And this, for me, is authentic. As long as it stays in the minors or the juniors, I think it's kind of cool. I don't want to see everyone doing it. I think if one or two teams does it, it stays cool. It stays unique. But once everyone starts doing it, it just becomes this silly, gimmicky thing that now everyone's doing, and now you're kind of forced into creating this new set of jerseys for the second half of the year. So I think it's a cool idea. I like what Edmonton has done with it. Next year, no, I don't want to see it again. I think it's cool for this season. Maybe next year someone else does it, and it's not like, oh, you have to take a turn. Now it's your turn. Now it's your turn. But Edmonton's done it. It was cool. Move on. Get back to regular. It's a neat special edition. So I guess what you could do is a team that's celebrating an anniversary. It would be cool to see them do it. But again, would love it to. I only want to see it in the minors or the junior ranks or whatever. Definitely not something I want to see in the NHL. The second fake or authentic question. After seeing them on the ice, the Olympic jerseys still suck. This is accurate. This is authentic. The Olympic jerseys still suck. I wanted to get a Team Canada. I'm a Ben Scrivens fan. He was doing pretty nice in the Olympics until he got hurt in the quarterfinal game. But I would have loved to get a Ben Scrivens Team Canada jersey. But the Olympic jerseys, they're terrible. We can't say this enough. I guess we're just beating a dead horse at this point. But the Team Canada Olympic jerseys, all the Olympic jerseys, there's nothing that excites me about them. So yes, this is authentic. They still suck. And our final fake or authentic statement. Fake or authentic, I am a Don Cherry fan. And for me, this is fake. I'm not a Don Cherry fan. Time's up for Don Cherry, in my opinion. He says things that applied 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, but they don't apply now. Canadians love him, and that's fair. He still says some things that are valid, but most of the things he says don't apply to the game anymore. For example, I feel he always says, throw it up the boards. Defensemen should throw it up the boards. Always, or off the glass. But that's not the way the game works anymore. You have to attack with speed, and the players are more skilled, and they're expected to be more skilled. You got to hit a tape-to-tape pass to a forward in motion to get out of your zone quickly. And the forwards hate when you throw it off the glass and they have to go battle for that puck to gain control, because they want to move, they want to attack with speed, and when you can do things with speed, you throw the other team off. They're not able to get in defensive position as quickly, and that opens up chances. So throwing it off the glass just because it's a safe play, it's not going to be successful in this day and age, because this game is all about speed. Throwing it off the glass is when all your options are done and you can't circle back and try again, and you just have to get it out. It's the emergency option now. Don Cherry likes to comment on players getting their sticks in the way and deflecting pucks when it's shot on net. That is the way that it's done now. Players are talented enough that they purposely angle their sticks in a certain direction to block a shot so that it deflects into the corner or out of play. If it deflects in and goes past the goalie, that's just circumstance. That's just what happened. You are expected to get in the way of pucks now. Another thing that Don likes to get on is not covering the points. And again, that's fine. That's just the way the game is again. Teams are more than happy to collapse in front of their own net and ask players to block shots from that position rather than covering the points and preventing passes from out there. Because if you get your 5-man unit down low against their 3 forwards, now you're forcing those forwards essentially to give it back to the defensemen who are not as offensively skilled. There's only a handful of defensemen that are offensively skilled like forwards. So you're playing the odds pretty much. So this is fake. I am not a Don Cherry fan, as you can tell. It's now time to give away a free HJC sticker. And what you'll want to do is be paying attention to the HJC Twitter account. At some point this week, the HJC Twitter account will send out a tweet with a direct link to this podcast, and it will mention winning a free sticker. Be sure to retweet that message for your chance to win the free sticker. A winner will be randomly selected from those that retweeted and will be announced here on the podcast again next Saturday. So again, at some point this week, the HJC Twitter account will send out a tweet with a direct link to this podcast. It'll mention winning a free sticker. Be sure to retweet that message for a chance to win the sticker. Last week's winner was Rory. So Rory, if you want to contact us, mailbag at hockeyjerseyconcepts.com. Rory D., you won the free sticker. Contact us, mailbag at hockeyjerseyconcepts.com, and we'll get that sticker out to you. Coming up next, we're going into the mailbag. Mailbag. The HJC Mailbag. If you want to leave a question in the mailbag for us to answer, go to hockeyjerseyconcepts.com. There's a form on the side of the page. It says HJC Mailbag right on it. You can leave a question, and we'll likely answer it on an upcoming HJC podcast. Likewise, you can also mail in your questions, mailbag at hockeyjerseyconcepts.com, and we'll, again, likely answer them on a future episode of the HJC podcast. First question comes from Burka Circus. What is the worst jersey foul you've seen in person? I tweeted it out a few weeks ago. I was at the Leafs game. Someone taped 97 McDavid onto the back of their 2011 Leafs jersey. I just can't even comprehend why you would do that. Connor McDavid is not leaving Edmonton. Connor McDavid's not coming to play for the Maple Leafs. And Connor McDavid wasn't even in the NHL when the Leafs were he played one season in the NHL when the Leafs used their previous jersey. But still, I don't know why you would want to throw McDavid onto that jersey. I've also going to Leaf games I also saw a lot of people put Gretzky on their Leafs jersey. I wonder if that happens elsewhere in the league. And one of my biggest pet peeves as far as jersey fouls go is getting current players on retro jerseys. Drives me nuts. They didn't wear that jersey, so I wouldn't. That's just not something I would do, and it drives me nuts. Next question comes from Alan. How many more good seasons will the Vegas Golden Knights have before tanking for the top pick in their draft? Well, they're doing excellent this season. I don't see them being a terrible team next season. I don't think they'll be as good next season. But by their third season, hopefully they've developed some players. So until they're a bad team, I don't think they'll intentionally tank for the top pick, Alan. But I would say Vegas being a bad team is 4 years away. That's my pick. I don't think they'll be as good next year. And by the third year, even if that team regresses, hopefully they've developed players in their system that can come in by the third year and pick the team back up. So at least 4 years away is what I'd say. There are more questions in the mailbag, but I think it's a good idea to leave them there. And when we have more guys on next week, we can answer those questions, and it can just, you get a little more out of it if the more guys are here to answer the question. So that was the HJC mailbag, and I guess it's going to be a short one today. I don't have much else for you. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Just me talking to you guys. We'll get some new guys. We'll get some other writers on next week. Hopefully. Maybe they don't want to be on the podcast anymore. I don't know. I haven't talked to them. I put out the call. I said, hey guys, we're podcasting. Who wants on? Crickets. That's all I heard. Crickets. Actually, Justin wanted to come on, but we record this on a Friday night, and when it's recording a podcast versus hanging out with friends, you probably should take hanging out with friends 100% of the time. Anyways, thanks for listening this week. Thanks for putting up with me, guys. A couple of reminders. Week 4 of the season is currently going on, so head on over to hockeyjerseyconcepts.com. There's a tab at the top. There's a banner on the side of the page. They both say the season. You can click on that. You can see the matchups and vote. Voting ends Friday at noon. And, of course, every week we have the concept of the week vote, and that also ends Friday at noon. 3 solid concepts in this week's vote, so that's on the side of the page in the blue poll. Ends Friday at noon. And if you go to hockeyjerseyconcepts.com and there's a shop tab at the top of the page, you can pick up your own HJC sticker and some jersey casual designs. You can put jersey casual designs on a shirt, phone case. You can get stickers of them made. There's a bunch of options there, so check that out. If you like the show, we would love to get you involved in the conversation, so you can always leave comments on the blog. Email us anytime, mailbag@hockeyjerseyconcepts.com. Let us know what you think about the show. Let us know your thoughts on the topic. If you provide a really good point, we'd be happy to bring it up on next week's show. And just let us know in general how we're doing. If you're enjoying the podcast, if you're listening, are you subscribed? We'd love to get some feedback on that. And like I said, you can subscribe to this podcast on any of the podcast players that you're listening to this podcast on. If you did like the podcast, help us out. Share it with a friend. Share it with some family. Share it on Twitter or Facebook. Whatever you got to do, get the share link out there. Get some more people listening to this podcast. It would really help us out. That's what we got for today. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you guys next week.